The notification on Sarah's phone glowed in the darkness of her bedroom. Another bill reminder. She sighed, swiping it away as she had done countless times before. The weight of financial worry had become her constant companion, pressing down on her shoulders like invisible hands. Tonight, like many before, sleep eluded her. There has to be more than this, she whispered to the ceiling, her voice barely audible in the quiet apartment. She reached for her tablet, seeking distraction from her racing thoughts. The algorithm knew her well, too well, perhaps, and suggested a video titled Divine Selection, Your Path to Abundance. Something about the thumbnail, a serene face haloed in golden light, caught her attention. Without much thought, she tapped it. "Welcome, chosen one." A warm, resonant voice greeted her. The speaker, a man named Gabriel, had kind eyes that seemed to look directly at her. "If you're watching this, it's no accident. You've been guided here for a reason." Sarah almost clicked away. She'd heard similar platitudes before, but something in his tone kept her listening. "You are not ordinary," Gabriel continued. "You were never meant to blend into the crowd or settle for a life of struggle. You are a chosen one, handpicked for a destiny of abundance." A soft chime sounded from her tablet, drawing her eyes to the comments section below the video. People were typing 777 repeatedly, sharing stories of transformation, of bills suddenly paid, of opportunities materializing from thin air. Sarah's skepticism battled with a desperate hope. "Let's begin this journey together," Gabriel said, his voice dropping to a confidential tone. "Close your eyes for a moment and picture the life you are meant to live." Sarah hesitated, feeling foolish, but then slowly let her eyelids fall shut. In the darkness behind her eyes, she began to construct an image, a life where each morning didn't begin with dread, where her creative talents were recognized, where abundance flowed not just financially, but in all aspects of her existence. "That vision isn't a fantasy," Gabriel's voice continued, as if he could see the images forming in her mind. "It's a glimpse of your true path, the one you've been diverted from, until now." The next morning, Sarah woke with an unusual feeling: lightness. The burden she'd carried for so long seemed to have shifted slightly, making room for something new. A possibility, perhaps, or maybe just the novelty of hope. Her phone buzzed with a message from her friend Maya. "Coffee before work?" "I have news." The local cafe buzzed with morning energy as Maya recounted her latest victory, a promotion that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. "I can't explain it, Sarah," Maya said, her eyes bright with excitement. "I just started believing it was possible. Really believing, you know. And then doors began opening." Sarah nodded, thinking of the video she'd watched the night before. "Actually, I came across something last night that talked about that, about being chosen for abundance." Maya's eyebrows rose. "Sounds like that resonated with you." "I'm not sure," Sarah admitted. "Part of me thinks it's ridiculous, but another part—" "Hey, whatever works," Maya shrugged, checking her watch. "I've got to run. Lunch tomorrow?" As Maya hurried out, Sarah lingered, watching the diverse flow of humanity through the cafe. Successful executives in tailored suits alongside struggling artists with paint-stained fingers. What made some rise while others remained trapped in cycles of scarcity? Was it really just a matter of belief? Of divine selection? She pulled out her tablet and found Gabriel's page. There were dozens of videos, each promising to unlock another aspect of abundance. She clicked on one titled activating your divine favor. Chosen one. Gabriel's familiar voice greeted her. Today we're going to activate the divine favor that's already within you. As she listened, Sarah noticed a man at a nearby table watching her. He seemed vaguely familiar, though she couldn't place him. When their eyes met, he smiled and approached. "Excuse me," he said, gesturing to her tablet. "I couldn't help noticing what you're watching. Gabriel's work changed my life." Normally, Sarah would have been put off by the intrusion, but something about his sincere expression made her respond. Did it really? How? The man, who introduced himself as Daniel, sat down and shared his story. How he'd gone from a struggling graphic designer to founding his own successful agency after embracing the principles Gabriel taught. "It wasn't magic," Daniel explained. "It was a shift in perspective. When I started seeing myself as chosen for success rather than fighting against constant obstacles, opportunities appeared that I'd been blind to before." "But isn't that just positive thinking?" Sarah asked. Daniel smiled. "Positive thinking is hoping for the best. This is knowing your worth and claiming what's already yours." He glanced at his watch. "I have a meeting, but here's my card. My agency's looking for a content creator with fresh ideas. If that interests you, give me a call." After he left, Sarah examined the elegant business card. Daniel's agency specialized in exactly the kind of work she'd always dreamed of doing, but had never pursued. Convinced such opportunities were for others, for the chosen ones. That evening, Sarah found herself drawn to Gabriel's videos again. This time, she watched one called "Breaking Through Limitations." "The world has rules," Gabriel explained, "but you operate under promises. The world has limits, but you access abundance. What seems impossible to others is your birthright." Sarah thought about Daniel's offer. Was it coincidence that she'd encountered someone offering exactly the kind of opportunity she'd dreamed of, just when she'd begun to open herself to the possibility of being chosen for more? With trembling fingers, she picked up her phone and dialed the number on Daniel's card. "I was hoping you'd call," he said when she introduced herself. "Can you come in tomorrow to discuss a project we're working on? I think your perspective would be valuable." That night, Sarah slept deeply for the first time in months, her dreams filled with golden light and open doors. The offices of Horizon Creative were nothing like the cramped, fluorescent-lit spaces Sarah was accustomed to. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating collaborative workspaces where people engaged in animated discussions over sleek digital displays. Daniel greeted her warmly, introducing her to his team. "Sarah brings a unique vision," he told them, speaking with such confidence in her abilities that she almost believed it herself. As they explained the project, a campaign for a sustainable fashion brand seeking to redefine luxury, Sarah felt ideas flowing through her with unusual clarity. When she shared them, the room grew quiet, not with dismissal, but with attention. "That's exactly what we've been missing," the creative director said, looking at Sarah with newfound respect. Later, as Daniel walked her out, he made an unexpected offer. "We'd like you to lead this project as a contract position. If it goes well, we can discuss something more permanent." Sarah's mind raced with objections. She wasn't qualified, she didn't have the experience, she wasn't ready. But Gabriel's words echoed in her thoughts. "You're not chasing success. Success is chasing you." "Yes," she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "I'd love to." The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of creativity and challenges. Sarah threw herself into the project, working with an intensity and focus she hadn't known she possessed. When obstacles arose, as they inevitably did, she found herself approaching them differently, not as barriers, but as opportunities to demonstrate her capabilities. One evening, while finalizing a presentation for the client, Sarah received an email notification that made her heart skip. The subject line read, "Your application status, Rent Relief Program." Months ago, during one of her darkest financial periods, she'd applied for assistance through a program she'd been certain would reject her. She clicked the email with trepidation. "We are pleased to inform you that your application has been approved." Sarah read the words 3 times to ensure she wasn't misunderstanding. The approval meant 6 months of reduced rent, breathing room she hadn't dared hope for. She leaned back in her chair, thinking of Gabriel's insistence that when you step into your chosen path, resources align to support you. Was this evidence of that principle in action? The next day, Sarah delivered her presentation to the client with a confidence that seemed to come from somewhere beyond herself. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. "This is exactly what our brand needed," the client's CEO said, reaching out to shake her hand. "You've captured the essence of what we're trying to create." As the team celebrated their success, Daniel pulled Sarah aside. "I told you that you were meant for this," he said quietly. "The position of creative director is opening up next month. I want you to apply." Sarah started to protest. Surely there were more qualified candidates, but caught herself. "I'll submit my application," she said instead, embracing the possibility rather than dismissing it. That night, Sarah returned to Gabriel's channel, this time clicking on a video titled "When Favor Finds You." "Chosen one," Gabriel began. "When you align with your divine purpose, favor doesn't trickle. It floods. What might take others years can happen for you in days because you're walking a path that was prepared specifically for you." As she listened, Sarah reflected on the rapid changes in her life since that first sleepless night. The opportunity with Daniel's agency, the approval of the rent relief application, the possibility of a promotion to creative director. Were these coincidences, or were they evidence of the favor Gabriel described? Her phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "You were right about that abundance thing. I started listening to Gabriel too. Coffee tomorrow? I have more news." Sarah smiled, typing back her agreement. Whatever was happening, divine selection, or simply a shift in perspective, it was spreading, creating ripples beyond her own experience. The cafe where they met was the same, but Sarah felt different within it. She carried herself with a new confidence, aware of possibilities she'd previously been blind to. Maya arrived breathless with excitement. "You're not going to believe this," she said, sliding into the seat across from Sarah. "Remember that business idea I've been talking about for years but never pursued? I finally took the first step, registered the domain, created a business plan, reached out to potential partners." "That's fantastic," Sarah exclaimed. "What made you finally do it?" "Gabriel's videos, honestly," Maya admitted, "especially the one about taking action in faith. I realized I'd been waiting for some external validation that might never come. So I decided to act as if success was already mine to claim." As they discussed their parallel journeys, a woman at the next table leaned over. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, "but I couldn't help overhearing you mention Gabriel's teachings. They changed my life too." Soon, they were joined by the woman. Elena, a life coach who had tripled her client base after embracing the principles of divine selection. The conversation flowed easily among the three of them, each sharing how their perspective had shifted, how opportunities had appeared, how doubt had given way to certainty. It's like we're part of something bigger, Elena observed, a community of chosen ones. As they exchanged contact information, promising to stay connected, Sarah felt a sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. These weren't just random acquaintances, they were fellow travelers on a parallel path. 2 months later, Sarah stood in front of the mirror in her new office, the office of the creative director at Horizon Creative. The promotion had come through, accompanied by a salary that had once seemed impossibly out of reach. She'd moved to a sunlit apartment in a neighborhood she'd previously only visited, and her bank account, for the first time in her adult life, contained more than just enough to survive until the next paycheck. But the material changes weren't what filled her with quiet joy as she prepared for her first day in her new role. It was the intangible transformation, the shift from seeing herself as someone struggling against the current to someone flowing with a divine purpose. Her phone chimed with notifications from the group chat she'd formed with Maya, Elena, and several others they'd connected with. Each day, they shared victories and challenges, supporting one another in their individual journeys of abundance. Ready for your first day as director? Daniel messaged separately. The team's excited to have your vision guiding them. Sarah typed back a quick thanks, then paused, thinking of how far she'd come since that first sleepless night. On impulse, she opened Gabriel's channel and navigated to that initial video she'd watched. You are not ordinary, Gabriel's familiar voice reminded her. You were never meant to blend into the crowd or settle for a life of struggle. You are a chosen one, handpicked for a destiny of abundance. The words that had once seemed like fantastical promises now felt like a description of her reality. Not because some external force had magically transformed her circumstances, but because she had finally given herself permission to step into a broader vision of what her life could be. She scrolled down to the comments section and, feeling a sense of completion, typed 777 before putting away her phone and stepping into her new role, not just as creative director, but as someone who understood that abundance wasn't just about financial prosperity, but about the richness of purpose, connection, and possibility. 1 year later, Sarah stood at a podium, looking out at the faces of 300 people who had gathered for the first Chosen Path conference. What had begun as informal coffee meetings with Maya and Elena had evolved into a movement, a community of individuals who had embraced the principles of divine selection and abundance. Daniel sat in the front row, now her partner in both business and life. Beside him was Gabriel himself, whom Sarah had eventually reached out to, forming a collaboration that had expanded both their platforms. When I first encountered the concept of divine selection, Sarah began, her voice steady and assured, I was at my lowest point. Financial struggles, creative blocks, a profound sense of disconnection. These were my daily companions. She paused, making eye contact with various members of the audience, seeing in their expressions the same hunger for transformation that had once driven her. What changed wasn't my circumstances, at least not at first. What changed was my willingness to consider a revolutionary possibility, that I wasn't fighting against a world designed to limit me, but rather had been diverted from a path specifically created for my fulfillment. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. The principles we're exploring today aren't magic formulas or get-rich-quick schemes, Sarah continued. They're invitations to align with what I believe is our true nature, beings created for abundance in all its forms. Financial, yes, but also creative, relational, spiritual. As she shared stories from her journey, the opportunities that had appeared, the connections that had formed, the internal shifts that had preceded external changes, Sarah saw heads nodding, tears flowing, hope kindling in eyes that had perhaps grown accustomed to resignation. We are not teaching you to chase wealth, she emphasized. We are reminding you to recognize your worth. There's a profound difference between the two. When she finished speaking, the applause was thunderous. People rose to their feet, not just in appreciation of her words, but in recognition of a shared understanding that they too were chosen ones, stepping into paths of divine abundance. Later, as Sarah mingled with attendees, a young woman approached her, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Your story is my story," she said simply. "I've been struggling, believing that limitation was my lot in life, but something led me here today, and I know now that I've been guided to a turning point." Sarah embraced her, remembering her own turning point, a sleepless night, a chance encounter with Gabriel's teachings, a decision to consider that perhaps she had been chosen all along. "What's your name?" Sarah asked. "Rachel," the young woman replied. "Well, Rachel," Sarah said with a smile of recognition, "welcome to your path. The journey has just begun." As Rachel moved on to speak with others, Sarah found a quiet moment to stand alone, taking in the vibrant energy of the gathering. From a seed of personal transformation had grown this forest of collective abundance, not through magical thinking or passive waiting, but through active alignment with a deeper truth about human potential. She thought about the many forms abundance had taken in her life. Creative fulfillment through her work at Horizon, meaningful connection through the community she'd helped build, financial prosperity that allowed her to support causes she cared about, and most importantly, the profound sense of purpose that now infused her days. The path hadn't always been smooth. There had been setbacks, doubts, moments when old patterns of thinking had threatened to reassert themselves. But with each challenge, her conviction had deepened. Not that she was special or more deserving than others, but that everyone had access to the abundance she had discovered if they could recognize themselves as chosen for it. As the conference continued around her, Sarah felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over her, not just for the material improvements in her circumstances, but for the journey itself. For that first sleepless night when something within her had been willing to consider a new possibility. "We are chosen ones," she whispered to herself. The words no longer an extravagant claim, but a simple acknowledgement of what she had come to believe was the birthright of every human being, to live in alignment with abundance, to recognize divine selection not as exclusive favor, but as universal invitation. And in that moment of quiet reflection, amidst the energy of 300 fellow travelers, Sarah knew with unshakable certainty that her journey of abundance had only just begun.